Shaheedah Hill with Maximum One Realty, the real realtor getting you over the hill to home ownership. And I'm very happy to have another attorney that I'm interviewing today, Jacinda Walker. And we're talking about everything you need to know if you're ending your lease early to buy a house. So if you're ending your lease, you're wondering how you should handle that with your apartment complex, with your landlord. We're going to go over some of the frequently asked questions that you need to have answered prior to making that move. Because I know a lot of people are breaking their lease and finding some opportunities in the real estate market. So I'm going to allow Jacinda to introduce herself and her business, and then we'll get right into the questions.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Jacinda Walker. I'm with Regal Legal Services. We're a full service real estate law firm here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we also practice in business law and contract law.
Okay, great. And she's also, we'll say this at the end, how you can reach her, but she's also barred, I guess, in New York as well. So
yeah,
New York
our firm is barred in New York and Georgia, so we can offer advice in both.
All right, so if you're outside of that state, then this will be helpful for you. But if you need to hire an attorney for any reason, then you probably need to hire one in your state. Okay. So my first question: are there any legal ways? So if you're breaking your lease, are there any legal ways to break your lease without penalty?
Yes, there are. So I mean, if you're active military, there's a Service Members Civil Relief Act that you can use. It's very specific. You have to provide a certain type of notice. It's a written notice. You have to be an active member of the military, and you have to be able to show that documentation to your landlord. But there is a way as an active serviceman to be able to break your lease, and that includes every branch, including the National Guard. So it's not just the four major, it's the National Guard as well. So you can break it that way. That's a federal act. And then there are several states, such as Illinois, I believe. There are a couple other states that allow you to break a lease in the event of a domestic violence situation. But that's by state basis. Unfortunately, Georgia doesn't allow that. But that's a state by state case. And then there are some apartment complexes that just have that policy. If there's a domestic violence situation, the property management company will terminate the lease. But that's more of a case by case decision. But as far as standard, you can look at state law to see if they allow for domestic violence, and then the federal statute regarding the active duty servicemen.
Okay. Now, a lot of my first time buyers ask me, can I break my lease without penalty to buy a house? Have you heard of any legal ways they can do that?
No.
So I just wanted to make sure, double check, because I was like, somebody did call me recently and they said, well, I'm buying a house. Can I break my lease to buy my house? And I said, you can break your lease, but you're going to be penalized to do that. You have to figure out in your lease what that penalty is.
Right. I mean, maybe there are some leases out there, because I don't know the gamut of the 50 states. And they're, again, landlord-tenant law is specific to each state. So maybe there are some leases that allow for it, but it's going to be very lease specific. But there's not a standard just because you're buying a house or you're necessarily going to be able to break your lease. It's really something that you have to plan for. You either penalty or you have to plan for the timing to be right for you to leave at the right time. Your lease is up.
Okay, good to know. All right, so my question number 2 is, can you pretty much get out of any lease as long as you give them a 60-day notice? Is that pretty standard?
It depends, is my answer. So most leases that I see, even commercial leases, if you give the 60-day notice, that's typically the time frame that they desire. But sometimes the penalties can be beyond a 60-day penalty. So there are some stiff penalties that will hit you for a longer period than 60 days. It could be 90 or 120 days. You don't typically for residential leases as much, but it could be. I mean, depending on what type of lease you signed. A lease is a contract. So basically what's in the confines of the contract is pretty much what stands. There are some states that have really heavy landlord-tenant laws that prevent the lease from controlling everything, such as like New York and California, New Jersey. Those are states where like landlord-tenant law is like a whole body in and of itself, right? It's completely like a whole bear, a whole animal.
Okay, gotcha.
Than that, other than those specific states, everywhere else, I mean, it's pretty much the lease controls for the most
Okay.
part what happens when you break it.
So they should take out their lease, whatever, when they signed it, whether it's a PDF or it's a paper lease. So they should take out their lease and look and see what is the penalty for breaking that lease early.
Definitely do not go by what your property manager said or says, because property managers change like night and day. You have to go by what is written on your actual contract.
Okay, very good advice. All right, so question number 3. So you're on a month to month. So I'm out of my, like, I guess, regular lease, and now I'm on a month to month. I didn't sign a new lease. Now, what kind of notice do I have to give then if I'm on a month to month with my apartment complex or with my landlord?
Okay, so that's regulated by state law. So in Georgia, that's 60 days is what you have to give on a month to month, typically.
Okay.
And sometimes a lease can dictate. So you had a previous lease that you signed and you're now on a month to month. Sometimes your previous lease can still dictate the type of notice you have to give. So my previous leases, like when I rented apartments when I was in law school, even though I didn't sign the new lease and I was month to month, my previous lease dictated I had to give a 30-day notice. If you don't sign a lease at all, we call it tenant at will. If you never signed a lease and you're just paying your rent kind of month to month, that's going to be dictated by state law. So the notice at that time, if you've never signed a lease your entire time of being there, it's going to be dictated by state law, and the state statute is going to tell you how much notice you have to give at that time.
Okay. Where can I find that? Can I just Google that, like notice in my state, or is there a place I should go to find that out?
You can Google it. You really can.
Okay.
But if you go to your state statutes, like if you just go like Georgia state statutes and now Google landlord tenant laws,
okay,
the appropriate sections will come up of the statutes of your state. But you literally can Google it. There's a lot of nonprofits that are really good for that. They'll have like a landlord tenant handbook. If you can find like a landlord tenant handbook for your state, it's really good. And also a good resource are the magistrate courts or the courts that handle landlord tenant cases in your state. Excellent resources. They always have a summary of the law. They always have links to the actual statutes, and they always tell you what you can and can't do, because they know that a lot of times when you come to landlord tenant court, you're representing yourself as a tenant. So they're trying to give you as much information as possible. So those court websites are amazing.
Okay. That's a good tip. All right. So our next question, number 3, I believe I might be a little bit off. 1, 2, 3, 4. How should the tenant give notice? So what is the best way to make sure they give proper notice to their landlord?
So notice is going to be determined by the lease. It should always be in writing, no matter what. I've never seen a lease that doesn't require a notice to be in writing. So, and you always want to be able to prove that you gave notice. So, handing it to the property manager is probably not the most effective, even though technically it would count as notice. It's not going to be the most effective for you unless you're able to get like a signed copy or an initial copy of the landlord. So I always say a way that you can prove you sent it. So if you communicate via email. If you have a tenant portal, use a tenant portal. If they require in the lease for it to be sent to a certain address, that's something that you should take notice of and make sure that it goes to that address, and either pay for priority or pay for like the extra delivery notice through regular mail. I think it's like $2 to pay for the delivery notice, just to prove that it was actually delivered to that address.
Okay, good. So make sure it's written and make sure it's a way that you can prove that you actually sent it, either through mail or email or the portal, however it is. You need to be able to prove that you actually sent it and what date you sent it.
Correct.
Okay. So number 5. All right. So usually when you are under contract on a house and you're going through the underwriting with the lender, they're going to ask for rental verification at some point, because they want to know, did you pay your prior rent on time? Because if you didn't, then maybe you're a mortgage risk to them. So I guess my question is, are they required to give that rental verification to the lender on your behalf?
Yeah, they're required to give your rental history if you request it. If you run into a difficult landlord and it's going to hold up your process, you can always just hand over your bank statements to your underwriter. You don't have to let it be your deterring process, because your underwriter is always going to want to back up anyway what your landlord has said. And so you can literally just hand over your bank statements to prove when you paid your rent, and when it came out, and basically that it was paid to the landlord. That's always another way you can use it if your landlord's being difficult. But your landlord should always give you your rental payment history. That should not be something that they're withholding from you.
Okay. Now ask this kind of a follow-up to that. What if you feel like they're giving them inaccurate information? So they're saying that you were late and you're saying that you were not late. So what happens there? Do you think they should just use the bank statements again? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's where the bank statements. I mean, your underwriter is working for the betterment of you, honestly. So if the landlord is saying, hey, I didn't get rent to the 10th, and you can prove because you paid everything through your bank statement because you've been diligent,
Right.
Yeah. So, but some of that's kind of the onus is on you. You have to make sure that you have paid things with a paper trail when it comes to buying a home. You have to be able to prove it. So check.
Right. So if you're paying people on cash, like stop doing that.
Yeah. Stop it right now. And
right.
They're not going to like it anyway, even if your landlord verifies it, because they don't have another way of verifying it besides outside of what this person is saying. They're not going to like cash transactions. They don't like them.
Gotcha. So make sure you have a paper trail, especially if you're trying to move into a house, because they will call. They either call or they want written verification from your landlord that you have paid on time and that you don't have any 30-day, 60-day late with your rental history. All right. So you give notice. So you have other clients, and this could worry some people as well. You are scheduled to close. So say your closing date is the 25th, right? And you told your landlord some months ago that you put in your notice and you didn't close on the 25th. Something happened and the closing was delayed. So now you put in your notice, but now you're still there and you don't want to be homeless because your house is not, the new house is not ready. You already put in your notice. So then what happens? Like, what can they charge you more, or can they throw you out, or how is that handled?
So they can't throw you out. That should be like the least of your concerns. They can try to start the eviction process, but most landlords don't, because the amount of time that it takes to process an eviction just isn't worth it for them, especially when they know that you're getting ready to go and you're going on, because technically you would be considered a holdover tenant at this point. So it's not like you have to pay or anything. You're a holdover tenant. You're considered. So what I try to tell people is to give yourself a 30-day time period. A lot of people like to do that because it costs money. But if you buy a home, you're not paying your mortgage the first month.
Right. And that's a very
oftentimes so yeah, so I mean, give yourself that buffer. I mean, yeah, you might not get a month off of paying rent or mortgage, but it gives you the time frame where you don't have to be stressed about moving from one place to another. So if there is a moment in time in which it's not ready, especially with new construction, that's the worst, right?
Yeah, right. They take a much longer to close.
Man. So the time, because I mean, it's weather dependent. It's so many things that can happen with new construction, but it's really typical for a closing to be off a day or two as a closing attorney, and there's nothing that we can do about it. We're waiting on the lender to give us a clear to close, and there's certain regulations and things that have to be met in certain timeframes, and they can't bend to them, especially now after the collapse. Things are so strict, they have to meet certain guidelines. So sometimes they can't even help it. But you want to give yourself, I would say, at least a 30-day cushion. So you could take your time moving so that if something happens, so that if it's a contingency sale on something else, maybe the person moving is contingent, this sale is contingent on them buying the other home. So it could not even be you or your sale. It could be the sale that's happening. So you want to give yourself that opportunity, because you don't really know what's going to happen in both transactions. So just giving yourself that time, I think it's wise. With new construction, I would say give yourself as much time as possible, because new construction, one of the things that I see most often that people don't realize in new construction is they have a year from the date that they said that house is going to be ready. Often, most of the time, they have a year to have that house ready without being able to sue them or any type of penalty. So you have to be prepared for that. Yeah.
Okay. And you made a lot of good points. So don't have it so tight where you put in your 60-day notice or 30-day notice, and then, okay, you had to move out on the 1st, your closing was the 31st, and you're trying to move out in that one day. Try to give yourself some space. And like for everybody's knowledge, if those of you that don't know, so say you close on, it's July, so say you close July 15th, you skip August mortgage payment. So you don't have a payment due in August. Your first mortgage payment is due on September 1st, and it's not late until the 15th. There's a little tidbit there, but you typically have one full month that you're going to skip. Like whatever month you close, you skip that month. So what Jacinda is saying is, go ahead and give yourself that time. But most people want, I'm gonna save on rent for 2 months, and then they want to save those 2 months, and then they cut it very close. Most closings, I would say the majority of closings don't close on the contract date. They don't close on that. So you have to give yourself at least some wiggle room, 30 days, to say, okay, I'll have time if it doesn't close on time to move and not be so stressed, as Jacinda said, because you do have that 1 month kind of buffer where you won't have any, rental payment or mortgage payment, perhaps, right?
Right.
If you time it right.
Definitely. Sometimes it's 2, depending on who your lender is. I mean, it could be more. So if you know now and you start planning, you can plan ahead for you. If you know you have to break your lease, you can plan for that cost. If you know that you want to give yourself, and you can give your landlord a greater notice. Like you can give your landlord 90-day notice or 120-day notice. You can still give them that courtesy notice longer if you need to, if you desire. So if you want to give them a 90-day notice, you can. And most landlords will still work with you if you're like, we're 30 days out, but I'm not going to be able to be out by this time.
Right.
They'll want to work with you because it costs them to file an eviction and go through the process. It costs money out of pocket.
They're usually not going to bother with all that paperwork.
Yeah, that's not a desired outcome. They don't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You may have already answered this question. And this is question number 6. What is your advice to make the process smooth? Basically, to give yourself some cushion.
Yeah, find a good agent, right?
Okay.
So find a good agent, right? Yeah, because they have so many questions. I've had some first-time buyers and sellers try to go through, or even more experienced sellers try to go through without an agent, and they try to lean on the closing attorney. And it's not a role that's appropriate for us, at least in the state of Georgia. We represent the lender, and in the event there's a lender, we have to be a neutral party. So it's not appropriate for us to kind of counsel in that way.
Right.
So it's just really important to have an agent to negotiate for you and speak up for you on certain things that we can't intervene on.
Okay. That's a good point. So make sure you have an agent, because even if you have a closing attorney and you don't have a real estate agent, that closing attorney is representing the lender, not representing you, not representing the seller. They're representing the lender in that transaction to make sure that transaction goes smoothly as to how the contract is set up. Right.
Yeah, at least in the state of Georgia. Yeah. We're within the lender.
Gotcha. So is that your number 1 tip? Have an agent, or do you have another number 1 tip for first-time home buyers?
So my number 1 tip is, once you start the process, do not make any purchases whatsoever on your credit card. Do not go try to buy a car. Do not try to apply for anything where they run your credit. Act like your credit. Just wait.
Just wait. And yeah, that's a very, very, very good point. And I tell people, however they qualified you or however they approved you, your credit needs to be better or the exact same. Because a lot of people get excited and they start buying stuff and doing stuff. I'm approved. Yes. They can just as easily disapprove you, or unapprove you.
And it happens. I've seen it happen way too many times. And trying to buy a car is probably the worst thing you can do, because they run your credit 20 million times. So just don't do it. Apply for anything. Seriously, nothing. Don't even pay off anything, because surprisingly enough, paying off debt sometimes can lower your credit score. So don't change anything. Talk to your lender before you do anything other than making your normal monthly payments. Don't change anything without talking to your lender first.
Right. And even, I'm gonna throw this in here, this happened recently. Even having somebody deposit money into your account other than your paycheck. That's a big red flag as well. Don't have any large payments or deposits, because the lender's going to ask where that money come from.
Yep.
Everything will be questioned from the time you are under contract till the time you close. All your finances are going to be questioned. So it's best to, like you said, best to make sure you're in the same financial position as you were
Yes.
before.
And even paying off, I was one point, because if people are like, I'm paying it off. No, just even paying off sometimes lowers your credit score. Even things, don't do it without talking to them first. Just make your normal monthly payments, keep them in the loop on everything that you do.
Right. Very good advice. Well, I think that's it. So if people have to, because I think a lot of, at least my first time buyers that are waiting, you know, they're kind of waiting out this recession to see if prices are going to drop. And, you know, they may have to break their lease to take advantage of something. But I want to let them know, you know, exactly what they have to do. So they're, I guess you said, prepared. Go ahead and read your lease now so you know how to get out of it, what's the penalty, those sorts of things. Well, I really appreciate it. Tell them how to reach you again. And I'll have it in the description as well.
Okay. Well, you can reach me via email, jacinda@regallegalllc.com. Our office number is 404-941-8979. Again, we're here in Atlanta, Georgia. We are also servicing New York, but we'd be happy to take your calls. We do free 15-minute consultations. So we service it by Calendly. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's an awesome app where I send you our calendar and you can just click and choose your consultation based upon availability. I love it. It's amazing. But yeah, we'd be happy to speak with you guys. If you can email me directly. You can call the firm. My direct line is 404-271-1276. But either way, somebody will get back to you.
Okay, great. And again, she does closings. You do them at your office and remotely. So you'll come to somebody and do a closing as well.
We do. We have a contract with Regis, so we're remote. We have like over 100 closing locations. People like to close in their house. They like to close at the property. That's been the new thing.
I'll close at the house, right? That's kind of cool. So, and just so everybody knows, you don't have to necessarily close at a closing attorney's office. You could close wherever, like the closing attorney comes to you with the paperwork. So you could close in your real estate office. You could close at the house. I didn't know that was a new trend, but you can close at the house.
You can close at your job, like if you
at your job.
Yeah, if you can't get away, you know, we have our portable scanners, our portable printers. If we need to print something, like we can literally close wherever you are.
Okay, that's great to know. So if you're in Atlanta or New York, then definitely call Jacinda for all your closing needs. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.